This morning we're going to discuss characterization. Characterization is one of the main building blocks of literature. Among these building blocks would be setting, and of course I said characterization, but plot structure, theme, symbolism, point of view, etc. With characterization, obviously it's about who people's a short story, who's in there. And first thing we have to realize that when you're analyzing a story, you're going to look at the characters. And you have to make judgments. And the first judgment you make is, well, who's the protagonist? Now notice protagonist is a neutral term. I didn't say hero, I didn't say villain, heroine, villainess. I said main character. We're not talking about good qualities, bad qualities, any qualities yet. It's just in peopling the work, this is the main character, protagonist. Arrayed against the protagonist is the antagonist. Now the antagonist could be another person, it could be an animal, it could be weather conditions, but it's the source of conflict between the protagonist. You know, it's a source of conflict, and the conflict is usually between a protagonist and an antagonist. There's a third force at work, and that's called the catalyst. Catalyst is the thing. Again, it could be a person, it could be a condition, it could be an animal that drives these forces against each other, the protagonist and antagonist. Let me give you an example. You have Jim, who is best friends with Steve, and Jim loves Sue. I hope I don't forget the names. Steve also cares for Sue. And we have the classic love triangle plot. So Sue is not really the antagonist. She is the catalyst. Without Sue, you wouldn't have the conflict between Jim and Steve. Okay? All right, I hope I illustrated that. So we have the protagonist, the antagonist, the catalyst. What is very interesting in literature is how an author presents a character. If it's a sprawling 500-page novel, you could find out by the novel's close every aspect of the character. But usually, especially in the short story, the writer uses a combination of ways to present and build the character. Let me put these on the board. First would be, we learn about a character through physical, all right, here we go, physical characteristics. Okay, physical characteristics. Now these could include physical features, face, body, and what are these specific characteristics? Color of hair, length of hair, style of hair, how much hair, no hair, color of eyes, shape of eyes, color of skin, condition of skin, mouth, nose, etc., etc. Height, short, medium, tall, weight, heavy, muscular, thin. These are all physical characteristics, but perhaps even more important would be the clothing that a person wears, because clothing would indicate, first of all, if it's really neat, you know, how a person sees himself or herself in terms of clothing, whether it's important to be neat, have the clothing well pressed, etc. It also talks about social status, economic status, If someone is wearing a pair of jeans that is often washed, perhaps torn in some places, it could either indicate a style or a person's economic status. So the type of clothing a person wears and all the ramifications about it help build the character. So those would be the physical characteristics. Another way we learn about a character is action or actions. What does the character do? This is another way that the author presents a character. What that person does. Then we have what the character says. We learned a lot about a character by what he says, either to the reader directly or to other characters. Then we have thoughts. What does the character think? Now, you could have a character whose actions and words could be very positive. But as we get inside that character's head, he may be very manipulative, very cynical. He may be using people. So on the outside, his personality is very open, seemingly very charitable, but on the inside, he's manipulative. He's quite negative. So you have an internal person and then the external person. And we have to distinguish the two. Between outward personality and perhaps inner values, which could also be called one's character, but I don't want to use character twice in two different meanings because it could be confusing. So we'll say inner values and outward personality. So let's see, we have physical characteristics, actions being taken, what the person says, like either to us or engaged in dialogue, his thoughts, and perceptions by others. For example, someone could be very shy and be kind of ignored by people in the room, but have a brilliant mind or have a great deal of talent artistically. But to others who are not aware of this, it's just another shy person who's a wallflower. So what an author does is choose these characteristics to bring forth his character. When we look at a short story, especially one that's, let's say, under 10 pages, the author is not going to use all these characteristics. He may use just a few. There's some stories that we have no idea what the character looks like at all, because none of the physical characteristics are mentioned. You could have some stories where there's no action. They just talk and think. Okay, I think I've made my point. There's one other feature of characterization I should mention, and we don't get to that until we have read the story completely. And that would be whether the character is flat or round. And flat or round, flat does not mean dull. Round does not mean entertaining. All it means is a flat character does not change his or her qualities by story's end. A round character does go through a change, perhaps a rite of passage, etc., like Sammy in John Updike's A&P. There's a story by William Faulkner called Barn Burning, and you have a father and son. Abner Snopes, who's the father, is one of the more fascinating characters in literature. He is iron-willed. He even walks very straight. Actually, he has his walk is because he was wounded in the Civil War. but everything about him is unbending, like iron, including his character. And he's fascinating, but he would be a classic flat character because he does not change. His son, who is actually the somewhat of the narrator of the piece, his son does change by story's end. But when you compare the son to the father is much more interesting as a creation. So then again, the round character does change. Well, that's about it for characterization. Thank you for your time.